What?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Real Talk with Coastal Collective. I'm Carrie Hofford. We have Aroha, Jessica, and Kayla. And if you want to find out more about who we are, go watch the last episode because it's all there for you. But today we are tackling the topic of money and pricing, and watch everyone crumble and slide under their chairs as we talk about this. I think money as creatives is something that gets tangled up a lot with a lot. I say this on my podcast all the time, but like if you want to learn what all your blocks are, start a business because all that shit comes to the surface, especially when it comes to asking for, receiving, taking, applying money. So we have to figure that out. So we want to talk about our own squidginess, the things that we learned from the beginning of our journey to now, and some of the things we still struggle with, even though we are relatively successful in our careers as far as each of us are concerned with success. So yeah, so let's get into it. So let's start first with Aroha. Talk about when you first started, kind of your relationship to money and pricing and all that good stuff versus it now.
Right. So for the longest time, I've never really had a barrier around spending money like most people. It's easy to do, but sometimes actually getting the money coming in is the difficult part. But initially when I started, it was a case of obviously doing my cost of doing business first. That was first and foremost. And for those who are starting out, that is the one thing that I would encourage you to do straight out of the gate. Because
Did you do that before you were like, okay, I'm like when you said I want to start a business? Were you like, I'm going, okay, in order to run a business, I need to do a cost of doing business? Because I know for
no,
me, I didn't do that for 2 years. So I just
not
want to
at
be clear,
all.
like, was this something like you were like, obviously, if I'm running a business, I need to do this first? No, okay, you were in the same
Yeah.
boat as the rest of
Yeah,
us.
so definitely not. And over the course of my career in various different businesses, before I stepped into the world of photography, I didn't do that. And it was a really steep and fast learning curve. I used to own a studio, a lab, like a photo printing lab. And also doing my wedding and portrait photography in Australia. And I found out really quickly by doing the photography side of things and also owning a photo lab, and seeing the cost of what printing was and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I'm not doing this right. Like I need to sort my shit out. Right. So I did have, with the help of my accountant, and folks that are qualified to be able to give that kind of advice, they went through it with me step by step. But before that, I was just like spending willy-nilly. Oh, yes, we need this stock and we need these frames and we need, all of the things. And then, come the end of the month, I'm wondering why I'm like scratching around to try and pay my bills. Right. So that was a really like difficult learning curve because I'm like, if I want to be successful at this, then I'm going to need to buckle down on spending for one, but two, also like projecting where I'm going to be and forecasting. And I never did that before. Like I get on my camera just to shoot, like I say, a wedding, and I'd be like, oh yeah, you got a wedding, there's $5,000. But I wasn't thinking ahead, right? So yeah, that was definitely a learning curve for sure.
Do you find, and anyone can answer this, do you find that being that photography for many of us is kind of like an accidental career? Like it's not like, everyone tells you your whole life that it's not a career, so you don't go into it. You just kind of start doing it for free, for fun. Everyone does that. Like, oh, I'll shoot this birthday party or this wedding or whatever. And then all of a sudden you have like 5 people that are like, you should have that, you should charge for this, or you should do this as a business. So you're like, okay, obviously. So we don't go into, like, I think we're not alone in this. Correct me if I'm wrong. like most photographers that I know don't go into photography being like, this is a business and I am a photographer. They are, I do photography. Oh, and I guess I should charge something over here. Would you, was that kind of your path, Jessica, for you?
Yes. I would say that's probably, I mean, I knew I wanted to do it as a business, but when I first started, I was a stay-at-home mom with my 3 little boys. And so I just wanted to kind of build a portfolio and help some people out. And so I did donate and give a lot of myself at the beginning for sure. And it's hard. I find I still talk about this today. And I think I know it's even more clear to me today than it was when I started, that photography and our industry is really unique. I think, you go into like a plumbing trade or this or that, like there's very clear pricing structures, and it's simpler in my mind, right? And with photographers, I have what I call business-minded photographers and artist-minded photographers. So the business-minded photographers, they're great. They know how to charge their worth. They know how to make money. But they feel like they are very streamlined, and no shade, nothing negative to the business-minded photographers. My brain just doesn't work like that. They've got a system, they've got a flow post in and out. They might have multiple clients in a day. My brain personally can't wrap around that. I am definitely on the artist side of the scale, in that I'm always wanting to create new and what can I do unique for my client. And I want to connect with my client. And, so then I end up having 1 client per day. I only like, 2 or 3 per week. So my structure is very different than the business-minded photographer. I feel like the business-minded people are the people that were like, hey, I could make money being a photographer. And the artist-minded are just, I'm a photographer and I create art. Oh, how do I make money doing this?
Or somebody said I should be charging money for this.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Or how can I do this more often? So I should probably charge money for this because I want to do it more often.
Right.
And that's definitely a common one. I think that comes up. Kayla, for you, how does financing, because you are more analytical brain, so when you started your photography or even working for other photographers, was it numbers first for you? Was it the opposite of what we're talking about, or still do you
not numbers first for me. I actually got into photography on purpose. So as the old cliche goes, it runs in my blood, and I mean that. We have like in our family history photos, we have pictures in our albums from a time in history when most people couldn't afford to take pictures. So I had relatives who just bought all the stuff, made it happen. My own grandfather used to take pictures like of everything all the time. He had those, like, you remember the Advantix cameras? He was goo for those. So I even still shoot film because it's more reminiscent of like where it kind of all started. So originally it was purposeful for me, like, I'm going to do this and see if I can make money. But then when I started, I was like, I'm going to have to do this a little bit for free to make money. So I had to build a portfolio and find some people who were willing to work with me for free. And eventually, people started paying. So that was great. When I work with other people, sometimes it's a little bit more money first because I'm rarely at the ground level when a business is bringing me in. So they're more at a point where they have some pricing, they want to improve on it, fix it, change it, throw it out the window and start over, whatever. So in those instances, it can be a little bit more money first. But from my own perspective, no, I started here on purpose.
Yeah, well, and I think it's like when it comes to pricing or things like that, it's really easy. Like we hear, and I think Jessica, you actually just said it, was like, charge your worth, right? And so when we're first starting out, we're like, well, obviously, like, to be fair, we have a lot more confidence in our skill when we first start out, like more confidence than we should have. We're like, this is the best work ever. Like, I'm posing people next to dumpsters and like, it's edgy, whatever. Like, we think we've made it, when we definitely did not make it. But yet we still have, like, despite that confidence, we still have a really hard time charging necessarily for that when we have a certain number of hours under our belt. So what was it for you all, whoever wants to answer this can, what was it for you that made you realize like, shit, like I need to go back to the drawing board, like I need to look at my expenses. I actually have to write everything out. For me, it was about the second or third year in business when I finally like had an accountant, because I would just cry every quarter, and I wasn't happy about that. So, but I realized I had given away like $60,000 worth of photo shoots, products, like images, whatever, to be nice. And I was like, like, you cannot run a business on $2,000 a year. That is not a business. Like I mean, at least there was a profit, but still $2,000 for a whole year of work. What? And so that was kind of my like bitch slap from the universe, so to speak, about like, okay, you clearly, if you don't want to do it, find somebody that loves numbers and spreadsheets and can do it for you to tell you the minimum amount that you have to charge. So that was kind of for me was the, oh God, that doesn't feel good. What was it for you that made you be like, uh-oh, I need to maybe look at the number aspect a bit more?
So
For me, it was,
oh, go Jess.
sorry. For me, it was definitely like I toyed with the idea of running the business when I was a stay-at-home mom. When I left that relationship and I left my ex, I tried to go back to a 9-to-5 job, go back to the workforce, promptly realized that that was definitely not for me. I was born an artist and I was determined to make that a go. And so at the scariest, most vulnerable time of my life, if you will, where the sole burden and responsibility of supporting my children and my family was on my shoulders, that's when things really got real. And I'm like, this is no longer a hobby. This is no longer fun and games. This is me getting down and getting serious about this. Otherwise, I need to go back to a 9-to-5 job, which I don't want to do because it's killing my soul. And it was taking time away from my children. So I started to prioritize what's more important, creating art and having fun and not making any money, or getting serious and running it like a business so that I can support my children, and also to teach them that they can do whatever they want and love and make a career out of it, and make it sustainable and support yourself and your family.
And you, Aroha?
So yeah, mine happened when I was already in business, but I was the owner of a service station. So, you know, and I realized that I didn't want to pump fuel for the rest of my life. So I actually began by showcasing my art in the cafe that we had attached to the service station. And that's when local people started seeing my work, and they were like, wow, can you do a wedding? Can you do family portraits and all those kind of things? And I was like, okay, so if I don't want to pump fuel for the next 20 years, I have to look at this, because people were asking for my services. But I'm like, I have to look at this for real. If I want to get out of what I'm in, like Jess, I need to sit down and I need to run the numbers, and I need to ask the questions of how can I make this work for me. And you know, when you're in partnership, like I was in partnership with my ex-husband, you know, trying to grow or build another business while you're also still working in another business so that you can get out of said business, that came with its own set of like, yeah, issues, I suppose. But that's when I realized, like, this isn't a game anymore. This isn't me taking pretty pictures on the weekends for friends and family. If I truly want to do this, then I'm going to need to do it right. And that's when I got folks in that could help me, like an accountant, and work on all of the things that I need to be aware of in terms of cost to make it feasible. Because without that, there would have been no point in me looking at this as an option. So yeah, that's basically what determined whether or not I could do it. And when we ran the numbers, and in the area that I was in was a very small rural country setting in Queensland. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but where else are all these farmers going to go to get their photos done? Because there's no one there. So I kind of had a captured market, I suppose. And literally that's how it took off. So yeah, it took time to figure those things out, but eventually I got there, and then I was literally the only photographer in my area that could help service these families and couples and whatnot. So it worked in my favor. So yeah.
Do you think that when you first started, like, let's say you did your cost of doing business, when you did that, the number that came out, whatever it was based on your, because everyone has, here's important thing if you're listening to this person, everyone's going to have a different cost of doing business. There is no one specific way. This is why this is important to do a cost of doing business. But when you saw that number come out and say, okay, the minimum you can do this job for is $2,000. $3,000, $5,000, whatever it is. What did that make you feel when you saw that number? Because I know for me, when I first realized, like, oh, I literally can't do this for less than $1,800. Okay, like I gotta be okay that is my worth, at least that is what I'm worth, right? And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up, is like, well, is my work good enough to be that, to charge that amount? And for me, honestly, doing the cost of doing business made me okay to charge that for my work, because I was like, well, I can't do it for less than this. But there are certain people that maybe they're early on in their career and they do their cost of doing business, but their skill level isn't there yet. That they might be like, well, I definitely can't charge $1,500, $2,000. What it would be your advice to them starting out? Would you say, because this is what I say, I'm like, well, keep doing it for free until your skill is enough that you can charge that? Or would you say, well, charge less and then build your way up? What do you think? What would you guys say to that?
My experience is it's harder to start low and then try to increase it, because now you've all of a sudden got clients and a market that are expecting something and going to hold you prisoner into that little price range. So I know from experience. I definitely would say now, like with relocating, if I want to tap into my local market and I want to, but maybe I feel like I haven't made a name for myself here yet, or maybe they're asking me to do things, which is happening right now, which are a little outside of my normal genre and box. So I think it's important to put the pricing you want out there and maybe offer promotional rates. So the first 5 people are going to get this price instead. Then you're still working on your skills. You're still working on building that portfolio, but you've already set the expectation that this is where my rates are going to be. So if you're lucky to be one of the first few, great, but everybody else knows what to expect moving forward. So there's no surprises of going, hey, I'm $200 this year for everything, and next year I'm $2,000 and you're going to get 10 photos. And people are like, wait, what? I think it's a matter of trust and reputation that's going to come into there too, right? With your local market. So
I think that's a really great point, because that's definitely something I'm sure you all have struggled with as well, as when it's come time to like, oh no, I definitely have to charge more, is now there's a fear that wouldn't have been there before of, well, I have a market, and that market, like the scarcity is real, of like, well, all my market's going to go away. Like, but if you just like wait until your skill level's at the level you feel comfortable charging whatever you need to charge, then that fear of losing something isn't there, because you don't have something to lose, right? Does that make sense? I don't know.
yes.
What do you think, Kayla, about that?
So I agree largely with Jessica. Anytime I was, when I was beginning in the market, I would offer promotions, but I would list them as like value, whatever, cross that out and put the price I'm actually going to charge you, and then give them what would have been included anyways. I wouldn't really change like the package or whatever products I was going to give. Oh, I'm making noise over here. The other advantage, well, I don't know if it's an advantage you have when you're new, is if you get an inquiry, you do have the ability to just make up a price. So if you get an inquiry for a certain type of job, maybe it's outside of your normal genre or what you want to do, whatever it might be, you have the opportunity to go, hey, you know what, if I charge this much money, covers the bills, get the job, get the experience. So that's always an option. Just never undersell yourself. Whatever price you pick, it has to be worth your while at least.
So how would you, Roha, if you want to answer this one, how would you recommend to somebody that is just starting out, they don't know how to price themselves, they've done their cost of doing business, but they're wishy-washy on their numbers because maybe they don't know yet, like they're thinking about getting a studio or they rent a studio sometimes and they don't know their numbers specifically. How does one go about knowing what their worth is?
So for me, when I started, that was really difficult to figure out. Just for me personally, I was like, how can I be charging this? But out the gate, I already had my numbers. So I was like you, it's $1,800 flat. That's it. I can't do it for any less than that. And that stuck really hard. So even though I probably wasn't at the skill level to be charging $2,500, $3,500 for a wedding, I was like, if $1,800 is it and I want to make a profit, then I'm charging X amount more on top of that because I want to pay for the education to get myself to the higher number. I want to get to mentors who can help me or implement certain things. So I looked at it from a very strategic position because I was like, yes, I may be a newbie, but in order for me to progress and get better at my skill and my craft, then I'm going to need to use the extra money that I'm putting on top of that number to be able to bring it back to me so that I can be like, okay, my prices now for a wedding are like $5,000. End of story, you know, but I reinvested that in myself. So I took that standpoint that, okay, I'm a new person doing this, you know, portrait session or this wedding or whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm going to come back at it with more skills and more knowledge because I priced myself probably higher than what most people would, but I did it for that specific reason. So
I think that's like one of the biggest things that I learned with me is like once I had evidence, like factual evidence that this is what it costs for you to show up to do this job in this way that you want to do it as many times as you want to do it, it was way easier for me to like put the nice factor aside, like the fear of not being nice, because now there's logical evidence that says this is being nice. This is like, so you can keep showing up to do this work. But it allowed me to step in strategically, like you said, and say, well, if this is like the quality that I want to produce, this is what it's going to take. Going to conferences, workshops, continued education, upgraded gear sometimes. Not that gear is everything. People don't waste your money on that necessarily, but you know. But like having that's where, again, I'm just going to harp on doing your cost of doing business. That's like my biggest advice to anyone starting out the gate. If you have not done this, please. And do it every freaking year because your vendors change their prices every year. So you need to adjust accordingly. And also your version of success is going to change probably. I know for all of us, especially post-pandemic, a lot of us had kind of like a, what do I actually want from my life, not just my business? And how is that going to impede the kind of final price point that I put on my time? Like, I think that was the one thing that we all realized, and we kind of talked about in the last video, was like, we realized like we have time, like we like being humans, not just little robots that show up and shoot and edit and show up and shoot and edit and like repeat. We actually like having a life and going on road trips across the country or hanging out with friends. Like that's an important piece to us being sustainable in our businesses. So yeah, so now like most of us have been established for 5+ years, right? So let's talk about the things that you're still squidgy with when it comes to pricing and money and all that good stuff. For me, I know obviously on my podcast I talk about the 6-foot unicorn that I purchased, which was kind of like my bottom of where I was like buying shit because I didn't feel comfortable receiving money. So as soon as I would get it, I would spend it. And then I was comparing myself to other photographers. So I would be like, I need to be better than that. I need to up level this thing by buying this stupid fucking unicorn, whatever it was. But it became like a little cycle because I would get the money, which was great, but then I wasn't comfortable receiving it. So then I would find ways to justify my spending of it. And that's kind of what you talked about at the beginning, Aroha, that you were fine to spend the money. That's the great relationship with the money, but receiving it was a whole other thing. And I find, especially in our genre, a lot of us are givers. We're empaths to some degree, that we want to give. So, but the reverse of that is that it's very hard for givers to take and to receive. And so when we do, it feels unsafe. It feels like if we hold on to the money, we're going to be seen as selfish or the rich bitch or whatever the thing is. So get it out of here. Right. So I know for me, that's still like something I struggle with. Charging it, not a problem. Receiving it, not a problem. Keeping it is my thing. Make it like coming up with a system or a strategy to put my money into accounts where I just don't see it. So that way I don't spend it. But working through that mindset has been really, it's taken me 3 years just to say money is good. Has been hard. So yeah, that's kind of my little journey there that I still struggle with that mindset process. So we'll start with Kayla this time. They'll go Kayla, Jessica, Aroha, so you have time to think about your answers. So Kayla, for you, what is like a money or pricing kind of thing that you still struggle with today?
I don't know. This one's a bit tough for me to answer. I came from a background where both of my parents were self-employed. Well, my mom wasn't self-employed, but she ran a hotel. My dad was self-employed, so I grew up in an environment where there were other people, I don't know, I guess making those mistakes.
Nice.
And I learned from that. I know not everybody has that. So I find a lot of the time I kind of I can call my dad and be like, hey, this thing, does it sound stupid? And he'll be like, yep, that sounds stupid. Or like, I don't know, give it a try and see what happens. So I don't know. You always hear people say things like learn how to walk away from, like if you don't get the deal you want, walk away. I can also do that in reverse. Like this is the price. If you don't want it, well, we'll talk another time. So that's never been terribly difficult for me. I mean, there've been times when I'm like, oh, I could really use the money. I have this thing I have to pay for, take the job.
Yeah.
But if you don't want what I have to offer, then there's someone else. You can talk to them instead.
What about spending money? Because sometimes I find when people that have grown up in a more financially like secure environment, they might be a little more risk averse to spending money or taking a risk on letting money go. Like that in itself can be a thing, but maybe not. I'm just, yeah.
I don't have so much a problem spending money, but you could be fair in calling me cheap or cautious. Yes, I'm definitely frugal. A lot of things I hear are like, no, I just want to buy it now. What do you mean we'll look for it cheaper somewhere else? Well, I mean, maybe you could get it cheaper somewhere else. So we'll look around and then we'll buy it. But in terms of actually making those purchases, once I feel comfortable with the price that's available to me, I'm like, all right, I'll buy it. I'll pay that much.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you're just like to do your research first kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. Jessica, what about for you? What's your squidgy money situation?
All of it. All money makes me squidgy, though I don't have a problem spending it per se. I know that through some, internal work that my father's definitely the cause of a lot of my anxiety and money blocks. We didn't want for things when growing up. Like I never worried about going hungry. We went on family vacations. I had a quote unquote idyllic life in that way. But my dad was always famous for saying, I didn't make money by spending money. And so he was it was weird because I think I had one of my good friends that I've had for, 35 years in my life. she always looked at our family as rich because they struggled. They struggled to put food on the table every week, and they struggled like that. And of course, you're living in your life, you have blinders on, you don't know any different. I never thought of us as rich or well off or anything. I just thought we were normal growing up. But my dad has always been funny with money. Like he's always working some side job, odd job. He had a great career as a firefighter. So we were always very financially secure. I have a strange relationship with it, because it was funny when, as I got older and I'm buying a house, selling a house, whatever, doing my career, having a life as an artist, a career as an artist is like so against everything my dad stands for. He always told me to get a job in healthcare or in the funeral business, because people always get sick and people always die. So there's, job security there. And of course, I went completely polar opposite of everything he wanted for me. But it was nice showing him, I kind of joked that I was going to show him my income tax return one year, because I was like, look, I did it. I made it as an artist. Yeah, it's funny. I guess he didn't spend money. There were times in our life where we did have family vacations. He did put some money forward for that, but there was never tangible, physical unicorns or needless things, that he never spent his money on that. And I find myself spending money on those things. And it's like almost, I don't know,
because you didn't get them.
Because I didn't, maybe. And yet I didn't want for anything growing up, like it's weird. I haven't really dug in deep yet to all of that baggage, if you will. I definitely struggle charging money, and I wasn't for a while there, right? Like I built myself up and I got to a place and I was super comfortable and I was super confident, like you say, in my skill set, what I was charging. And I kind of hit this awesome wave and I was just riding it. And now that I've relocated and I'm in a completely new market, I'm in a more rural setting, in a smaller setting. And all of a sudden I feel like I'm starting all over again. And I'm back struggling with money. And I'm also back in the position, just like I was when I had my kids and I was a single mom. I feel like I'm back in that, like, I need to make money. I need to provide. I need to do that, or I'm going to go back. I also worked at a petrol station, as Aroha would say, or service station. I was a gas attendant for my first job. I don't want to go back to doing that. I know that I want to do this. And so I need to put my good big girl pants on and start doing tough stuff. But like I said earlier, I know I'm not going to just go, hey, I'm doing $300 photo shoots again. I'm not going back there. I know how hard of a hill that was to climb and get up to where I was. So I'd like to just start it off and be like, here's my rates, even if I just continue where I left off, but then do the promotional pricing or something, saying, hey, first 5 people that want to book a shoot with me, great. You're going to get an awesome gift and reward from me. But I definitely need to be able to pay for my awesome new studio, and I need to be able to continue this life and not go back to the 9 to 5. So
Awesome.
Work in progress.
Yeah, well, and I think all of us are in some capacity. I think that's like every time we find ourselves back, we're always faced with a similar thing, like the devil just has a new face kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like every opportunity to say, okay, I'm not doing that the same way I did last time. What am I doing differently this time? To show that we're leveling up, that we do want for things, and it's okay to want for things. And it's almost like you have to be faced with it again in order to like surpass it this time, you know what I mean? Or else it just keeps showing up differently every time. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, though. I think it's really important for people to understand that just because we have some certain level of notoriety in the industry, or like we're educators or things like that, that we still deal with this shit. Like mindset stuff doesn't come undone overnight, or when you start making a certain amount of money, like all of those thoughts are still there. So that's one reason why we wanted to do this, was to show people that this is shit that all of us face this part of running a business. So I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that. And Aroha, last but not least, waiting to talk, eager beaver over here. All right. Tell us about what are your squidgy money situations currently? What do you struggle with?
So currently, the situation that I have after this past year is the lack of clients that I have because I haven't been showing up in my community the way that I should have been, or what I put on myself. I should have been around more. I should have been doing more, because that comes from a place like most of us, our families and our parents have kind of instilled in us, excuse me, some very, some very strong values. And mine was from my mum, who was all about working 24/7, do not stop, do not pass go, just take your 200 and keep going. And so I got into that mindset very young, and it was just like hustle, hustle, hustle until you fall down. And when you fall down, wipe yourself off, get back up and keep going. And so there was this want and need for her to acknowledge that I was doing the things that she wanted me to do. But at the same time, I was completely exhausting myself because I was a hamster on a wheel and just kept going and going. So that was really interesting, after taking this time away for a year, to now be like, oh shit, I don't have a whole lot of bookings and a whole lot of clients like I used to. But that being said, it gave me the time to sit back and say, what do I truly want? How many clients do I truly need to be able to give me the life that I feel happy with, and to give me that work-life balance? Because I never had that before. It was literally make the money all the time. Spend the money so that you can make more money all the time, right? So that's literally what it got to. And like I said in our other video the other day about having the studio space upstairs sitting and nothing happening, and me just watching the dollars go out to ching and rent, and I'm not doing anything with it. And that was really hard to do, but I needed to do that at this point because I needed to figure out exactly where I want to go financially and in my career, obviously, too. But yeah, this money mindset that I had about you cannot stop, you have to keep churning, you have to keep creating so that you get the money to keep going, to improve. And like I said, that's what I did initially when I started my pricing packages. You know, I have to make this much, but I'm going to slap this much more on it because that means that I can earn more and produce more and all of that kind of stuff. So what it looks like for me now is very different. I do not have a problem. I've never really had a problem with charging my worth, so to speak. My prices are my prices. And like Kayla said, you know, if that doesn't sit comfortably with the people that are connecting with me to look at booking a shoot, that's okay. They're not my ideal client, you know, but at the same time, I'm also not looking to book 10 clients a month. Now for me, it's about working smarter, not harder, and being okay with having 2 clients a month with an average spend of, you know, $5,000 or $7,000, and being okay with that. That was really hard.
I was gonna say, that's because I did that similar transition to be like, okay, because one of my affirmations is half the work and twice the money. What I didn't realize with that affirmation was that I would be bored. And because I was so used to always working, that my brain is like, something is wrong, something is wrong. And I was like, just go look at your bank account. Like, you're safe. Like, the money's there. It's just coming in different ways than it was before. But like, there was this equivalency with that work and receiving money has to be hard. And if it's not hard or you're not constantly working, then you don't deserve it. and the guilt that came with that. I was like, oh God.
I feel that right now since moving. My momentum's been gone, is completely gone. That rhythm I had, and I'm slowly chipping away and creating it and getting back there. And it's definitely improving my self-confidence in my work and my business and everything again. But yeah, I feel that one.
I think that's something that we don't talk a lot about. And actually, I do have a podcast coming out because I was journaling, and that came out in my journaling. I'm like, oh, I'm creating my own suffering because I think that this has to be harder than it actually is. Yeah. And I was like, oh God, where did that come from? And I was like, and then I like walked myself through like my self-coaching practice to realize that if I'm not working all the time, then I'm going to be a freeloader or somebody. And I was like, that's not my word. Like, what the hell? And I was like, oh, that's what my dad used to say all the time, like growing up on a farm where hard work is rewarded, right? Where it has to be difficult. And I was like, oh. I was like, no, I want to be like a laze around artist that can daydream and read and then the like fruits of that type of labor are rewarded financially because that's where I'm at my best. And that's okay. Just because it's fun and easy for me doesn't mean it's easy for someone else. Like the person that does my taxes still charges me, the price that they pay, but that's easy for them and it's fun for them. I think that baffles me, but tell me they enjoy looking at spreadsheets and numbers, right? And so in my brain, I'm like, and they're okay to charge their rate. So just because it's easy for us and it's fun for us doesn't mean that we need to be paid less for it, I think is a really important thing for creatives to know.
I think that's super valuable. I like that perspective.
Do we have what are some last minute tidbit advice? We've already like slammed home, do your cost of doing business. And we'll just slot that in there one more time. Do your cost of doing business. And if you don't know how, just Google it. There's spreadsheets everywhere. Yeah, I'll put a little plug. I do have a course in my thing where it'll teach you all that. But anyway, for you guys, what is one piece of advice that you would offer to yourself if you were to meet you starting your business, eager-eyed, super creative, excited to get on posing people around dumpsters, that was like super jazzed to be running a photography business with no idea what the hell was about to come? What advice, aside from cost of doing business, would you give around pricing? Jessica.
Oh, of course you start with me. I guess the lesson I knew was just to not start low and expect to just, be raising my rates every 6 months to a year and thinking that was the way to do things. I honestly had no idea about running my own business. I had no idea what to do. And I didn't really have a support network around me either at that time, growing up with my family. That was, as you said, it's hard work. You go do the job. It doesn't matter if you like it. Hard work equals money. And I really resonated with you when you said that. So just charge what you need to charge, like I said before, and do a promotional rate or do introduction rates or do something like that, but don't set yourself up for a harder struggle than is necessary. I had no idea, and I had no idea what running a business was really going to cost. And a lot of people don't factor in taxes at the end of the day, and they pocket money, and then they're like, woohoo, I made all this money, and all of a sudden they have this big tax bill at the end of the year. Put money away, like you said, hide accounts that you can't see or something like that, because the first couple of years when you're paying taxes is a bit of a shock to the system.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I had to learn, was like, just because it's in my bank account doesn't mean it's mine.
And don't spend money that you haven't earned yet.
Yes.
So if you're collecting a retainer or deposit for a session, but you haven't actually done the session yet, don't spend that money until you've signed, sealed, delivered for the client.
Yep.
Because when you have to refund or something happens, and it will, and all of a
Like
sudden,
a pandemic.
right? And you're like, I don't have that couple $100 or whatever it was to refund you. How does that make you look as a business too, right? Like that doesn't look well for your business, and it definitely doesn't feel good as a person.
It feels good.
So
Yeah.
it's squidgy and icky.
All right, Kayla, what about for you? What is a tidbit of advice you would give little Kayla starting her photography career?
That you're gonna screw up at something. You're gonna have to eat it on a session fee because you double booked, eat it on an album because you screwed it up, whatever. You're gonna screw up. You're gonna screw up something, 5 things, 27 things, whatever number of things, and it's okay. Just learn from your mistake, move on, and try not to do it again, which you probably will. You probably do it at least twice.
Maybe a few times, and then you'll be like, okay, enough.
Yeah. Then you stop selling albums because you can't do it.
But that is a great piece of advice. I always say, fix the problem and then cry. like make the mistake, acknowledge the mistake has been made, don't ghost your clients, don't do that. Like, fix the problem, give the refund, find somebody to take your place, whatever the thing is, fix the problem, and then go into the fetal position and cry as long as you need to after the problem has been fixed. Because yeah, that's a good one, because like people that are perfectionists, or they've been used to doing things right in school or things like that, business is going to throw a lot of things your way that you're like, oh no. So very good advice. All right, Aroha.
I just want to touch on a point that Jessica made about the spending before you have completed the job. That's a really, really important one. I wish I had known that right back in the beginning, because I have been in that position, not these days obviously, but like back then, where I was like, oh, there's a big wedding client, and then you've got a couple of grand in your bank account, and then oopsies, they broke up. Oh no, I've gone and spent the money. Right. So definitely would advise anybody not to go ahead and use all of that income before you've finalized everything with your clients. And also, great one about putting money aside. So when I first started in the service station industry, the fuel industry, we had to do just that because of the way the structure was with the government and how we had to pay HST, GST, and all those things. It was all very new to me, and it was one of the first pieces of information my accountant gave me, was when at the end of the day, when you've taken all your money, take your 10% or 13% or whatever it is that you're collecting for the government and put it away. Because that is not your money. You are a tax agent. You are just collecting those monies for the government. So that was something that I learned, and it's a really valuable piece of advice, because no one likes paying taxes, but certainly no one likes paying taxes when the bill's so huge and you weren't expecting it. Right. So the other thing that I wish I had have known when I started was more about work-life balance and preventing burnout from running so hard, so constantly to earn the money. Like now, obviously, we're all in a position a bit more mature in our businesses, and we've figured these things out as we go along. But I think if I had known a little bit more about how to balance work and life and family, I would have survived more of the pitfalls than I did in the beginning. So yeah, I think that's really important, just to take into consideration your time, because I don't know about you all, but when I first started, it was like, oh yeah, I'll do a 10-hour wedding and I'll charge this much, and then be like, oh, but now I have 20 hours of editing to do that I didn't factor in. And that took away from my family or my other business or whatever the case may be, right? So yeah, valuing your time. That's why we charge accordingly, right?
Yeah. So my last bit of advice would be number one, work on the freaking money mindset. For reals, y'all, because again, that's in your personal as well as your business life, but it definitely will start to show up in your business life and how much you give away and how many clients you take. It's also the same with time. Time and money are usually synonymous with feeling selfish. So I want to encourage you, and I'll list in the description below, I'll list some of the books that have helped me on that journey. And if you guys have any, feel free to add them. So that way you can get started on that fun adventure. And then the other piece of advice that I would get is trust in people around you that are good at the things that you're not. Your brain just doesn't do. But like, I've just recently learned there's a word called dyscalculia, which is essentially where numbers float around in your head when you're trying to do mental math or math and all. I have that. I didn't know that because I was a good student, right? But math was always my hardest subject. And when I have to look at numbers, spreadsheets, it literally makes me feel insecure, less confident in myself as an overall business person, because we're taught that that's how you are a good business person. And so that, like, trust that there are people out there that can help support you. And yes, is it going to be an investment? Absolutely. But it's necessary for you to run an actual business. Go to your entrepreneurship center. Like, I know here in Winnipeg, we have the Women's Entrepreneurship Center. Go to like any business resource center, Chamber of Commerce. They'll set you in the right direction where how to get help on your taxes, find the accountants for small business owners. Well, we're also talking about that. Find an insurance, get your insurance. You don't want to have to pay that bill. It's better to pay that ahead of time. So yeah, just a few things to think about there. But just because you're not good at something doesn't mean you're not a good person. Okay, that's very important. We can't, like, the world is so much better because we have people that are good at different things. Know your strengths, focus on those, and support yourself with the other strengths. That's the best way to do it. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for today's topic on pricing. I'm pretty sure we'll probably revisit this in the future. So if you have any questions or anything that you're struggling with when it comes to pricing or cost of doing business or taxes or anything like that, feel free to let us know in the comment section below, and then we will use that information to help us out with future episodes and all that good stuff. But we will see you all in the next video. Bye.